The moment someone says, "You're quiet," in a room full of people, there's a half-second where you consider explaining yourself. And then you don't. You give them a small smile, maybe a subtle shrug, and go right back to observing. You choose to focus on whatever is happening around you rather than justifying your silence to someone who likely wouldn't understand. That specific experience isn't just a random personality quirk. There is an entire hidden psychology behind why your brain reacts that way. Most people look at a quiet person and assume it is simply a volume problem. They think you just need a little encouragement to finally step out of your shell. But that common assumption is entirely wrong. You aren't hiding inside a shell. You are navigating a world that constantly rewards people for speaking quickly, rather than speaking intentionally. To understand why this happens, we must look at how different brains process data. Developmental psychologist Jerome Kagan at Harvard spent decades studying infant temperament to identify a group he labeled as high-reactive. These infants showed intense physiological responses to minor stimuli, indicating their brains process the world with immense depth. When Kagan tracked these individuals into adulthood, he found they naturally became quieter, more introspective people. This proves your silence isn't a social failure, but rather a unique neurological reality. Your system is fundamentally wired to intake more environmental data than those around you. You aren't speaking less because you're afraid, but because your brain is already running at maximum capacity just processing the room. Because your brain runs at high capacity, you spend massive energy managing the gap between what you notice and what is worth saying. This gap is exactly where a quiet person's private comedy lives. You often form a perfectly witty response in real time, only to realize the moment has already passed. Someone else shouts the obvious punchline to get the laugh, leaving you holding an unexploded thought with nowhere to put it. So you keep it to yourself until you can text it to a close friend later that night. They confirm you are hilarious, yet nobody at the party ever sees that side of you. It is a specific invisible loneliness to possess a depth that others lack the patience to uncover. You eventually learn to cherish your inner world, even if it remains unseen by the crowd. This internal lag happens because of a concept called sensory gating, where your brain filters inputs at an exceptionally high resolution. While a talkative person experiences social settings as a low-resolution stream focused on throughput, you are busy absorbing the fine, meaningful details. You notice subtle shifts in tone, or when someone glosses over a point, which places a high cognitive load on your system. Because you are decoding complex paralinguistic cues, you have less bandwidth available for the demands of rapid-fire small talk. The modern world rewards volume and speed, yet your high-resolution brain naturally prefers considered intimacy over spontaneous noise. You are actively prioritizing accuracy and deep observation over the simple, external urge to be heard by a room full of strangers. Ultimately, your silence isn't a lack of engagement, but a deliberate choice to value substance. Living with a high-resolution brain means you spend your life receiving a very specific, unwanted message. It often starts on childhood report cards, where teachers note that you need to participate more. Your parents then pick up the thread, asking if you are okay in that careful, overly concerned tone. Even relatives at holiday dinners treat your silence like a puzzle they are desperate to solve. They ask constant questions, hoping that enough enthusiasm will finally crack you open. Over the years, this gentle correction teaches you that your observant nature is somehow flawed compared to the loud performance around you. To protect your energy, you eventually learn to stop just being quiet and start being intensely private.
You build an invisible wall around your thoughts simply because you are tired of people treating your mind like a novelty act.
There is a massive psychological distinction between being quiet and being private. While quiet is a functional volume setting for low auditory stimulation, privacy is a protective boundary that develops over time like an emotional callus. When others constantly treat your silence as a problem to be fixed, your brain adapts by withholding your inner world to protect your energy.
Talkative individuals often treat conversation like an improvised performance, but you view your words as having significant psychological weight. You do not feel the typical pressure to fill a silence just to ease someone else's brief awkwardness. Because you cross an internal threshold to ensure your thoughts are fully lived in, saying something thoughtless feels physically uncomfortable. Ultimately, this precise filter ensures that when you do speak, your insight lands with an authority that rapid-fire talkers rarely achieve.
That precision means you handle your inner world completely differently than the rest of the world. When you experience deep grief, frustration, or sudden joy, it doesn't get processed outward. It dissolves slowly inside you, like sediment settling at the bottom of a river. The people in your life may have no clue what you are carrying, not because you are hiding, but because you stopped trying to force complex feelings into shallow words long ago. You carry that depth quietly, just as you navigate a world that never stops shouting. When someone points out your silence, remember that you don't need to change your volume to fit their expectations. Your mind is a beautiful, high-resolution space, and you don't owe anyone a tour of it just to make them comfortable. If this perspective connected with you, hit subscribe and tap the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. You can watch the rest of this ongoing series right now over on our channel. Click the next video on your screen to keep exploring.